And for more on government and the Gauteng government's intervention, let's speak now to the Gauteng government spokesperson, Vuyo Mhaga. Vuyo, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mhaga. I think obviously as we, embark on this process, there's going to be a lot of questions by various role players, and those questions are going to be the how, right? And we'll get there in a moment. But I want to look at the data, because what we heard from the Premier, 441 cases reported within this year, in the province alone, and then 23 lives are lost. And it makes me wonder if perhaps the numbers that we've been tallying recently of what's seen in various schools and in communities such as Naledi, for instance, is speaking to a larger problem that could possibly have been in existence for a longer time. What do you say to that?
No, indeed. I think there is that feeling that the numbers might possibly be more than what is there, but it's what we've actually recorded in the Department of Health. We will continue to do that. And really there has been about the handling of the food. As you know that most of in the township of some of the shops that are there in terms of the hygiene aspect of it, and obviously in trying to kill some of the mouses that will be there, and when there's basically within the food space, and predominantly amongst the fatalities or the death that we really received, about 19 of them would have been associated with what we call aconofate. They call it Ferrari, I think, in the language township within Gauteng. So there is a reasonable belief that there is a particular chemical that might actually be used to deal with some of like mouse, and then that obviously affected the food space. But that work is still being done by some of the authorities.
Yeah, and I know that you've also come up with a name, not come up with one, but even in that answer, really tried to bring it down to the people. And there's a lot of jargon, isn't it? We're saying 19 of those deaths tested positive for organophosphate. Now, for the everyday South African, we need to hear what that is, right? If I'm in Soweto, Alexandra, Ekurhuleni, what am I looking out for?
I think it's normally, they call it Ferrari. I'm just still have, obviously, myself to understand it from the Xhosa point, because that's one language I'm quite familiar with. But it's generally people within Gauteng will know that term. And I think Dr. Mswaledi also was quite helpful to unpack what basically we're dealing with, so that we don't necessarily deal or use the scientific terms, but we use the language that our ordinary people basically do know.
Yeah, because let's talk about now the measures moving forward and what this, implementation of bylaws in the various municipalities is going to look like. Because you've got speed that is absolutely necessary at this time. The call that was made by the Gauteng Department of Education to schools was no supplying of food inside and around schools. It's going to be difficult to maintain over the long term. So let's talk speed with the implementation and really the nuts and bolts of what the implementation of these bylaws is going to look like over the days and even weeks that come.
No, I think what is important is that we had all the mayors across Gauteng that were the part of the issue that they need to do is that in their council they must obviously table these bylaws to deal with that with the provincial commissioner in the meeting, and some of the police. The colleagues at Department of Health are already doing work. We'll go to a massive communication drive where we'll obviously have community meetings, speak to the people, engage on them, going to the schools. There will be a template that is used so that if there is any other thing that is basically there, is able to be recorded in terms of the schools, the hospitals, the community centers. So we're going to go to a massive drive, but importantly also to speak to those that will be affected by these particular regulations, which are your Spaza own shoppers, some of the township retail people, so that they understand. And part of the measures is to obviously to re-register some of these Spaza shops so that they are able to, when they come back, they basically comply in terms of the food handling, in terms of other compliance, the food and safety compliance, and also other compliance basically. And those who might not necessarily obviously comply, then the police will be there. What is important and beautiful is that we'll be able to use all resources from different municipalities, as well as from national government and the provincial government, to make sure that we're able to respond with this with speed.
Yeah.
And the meeting that was held today will continue to be held on Saturday, and we'll be able to brief the people of Gauteng on basically the measures and the progress of the work that we're doing.
The Premier is saying the meeting to be held every Saturday at 6 o'clock. So that's definitely something we'll be watching. But I wanted to take advantage of the platform that we have right now, where we say Spaza shops must re-register. Speak to one of them now, where they go, what that registration process would look like, what they would receive for it. And I'm sort of talking about some kind of certification so that even the consumer is able to tell. And what happens if they do not re-register, perhaps even timeframes?
No. What will happen is that the MEC Maile, who's the MEC for Economic Development, will be meeting tomorrow with some of the MMCs to trash out that particular work. Of course, not something that will necessarily do it, let's say, next week. So we have to go through a very rigorous education system, and we'll obviously meet with some of the owners, about 2,000 plus Spaza shops within Gauteng. So we'll have to go, MECs, mayors, MMCs, everyone basically will be in the streets of Gauteng and explain what exactly are these regulations, so that when we then come back and MEC Maile and the team comes back to say, yes, the way that we're going to go about it, these are some of the measures that we're going to do. So we'll be able to basically engage them. But definitely sometime this year, we'll definitely have those regulations. So that, but also the important part is to also give the education. So it's not necessarily to punish, but also to make sure that the environment that they're operating on is a proper environment, the infrastructure that must be needed there, including the financial support on some of the sponsors that might basically need. So we'll be able to kind of not to second guess who's basically trading, where is he trading what goods. So we're kind of going to have that kind of an understanding, at least from the municipal point of view. And that's really the crux of these bylaws.
Okay, so the idea here is to also have a strategy that includes some education for Spaza shops in our communities. I think no one can disagree that that's important. The concern is going to be around, how much work that's going to require. And then, is there a concern that street vendors may be falling through the cracks here?
No, everyone will be actually engaged, from street vendors, from the taxi association, churches, all the important sectors really within society will be able to deal with it. You'll remember there's also what we'll call the Township Economic Development Act, where we'll actually regulate where is business supposed to operate. So you cannot just wake up and just decide to put a stand. So you need to be certified to say, in this area, yes, that business is known in the municipality. Therefore, you are supposed to operate, and the type of business that you're supposed to operate is this nature of business. No one must sleep in the shop where they're basically selling. So it's quite a very comprehensive bylaws that are there. So basically, anyone who sells within Gauteng might not necessarily be Spaza shops alone, but obviously they constitute quite a huge chunk of this particular economy. But generally, the manner that we do business, it must be basically formalized, and our people must be supported, both with the infrastructure as well as with some of the marketing access basically going forward. And
of course, the call being made for communities to also speak out when they do see problematic stores in their community, yes?
No, it's quite important. I think that's what we're saying. We're going to be going aggressively, going to schools, going to communities as early, I think, as next week, to make sure that we really basically try to curb, the number of deaths, because I think you'll agree 23 is quite a huge number for young people just dying around that. So there'll be a lot of work that is done by the executive authority together with the police to educate people. I think that's what is very important, is for us to talk to the people so that they become vigilant and basically become each other's keeper as we go forward.